Hi. I'm Jeff McCabe. Really glad to see everybody here, and thank you for coming out and taking part in this community effort that it's going to take to make a difference here. I'm going to talk a little bit about food. I'm really passionate about this, so I have to carve, like Tom, I could go on for a while. I have to carve out a little niche that I'll talk about of this big piece, this big bite. I'm going to contend that food is taken for granted, and I think even more so than air and water. I think with air and water, we had recent, in the last 40 years, kind of crisis moments that led to grassroots movements, policy changes, and behavioral changes that really our water and air are being treated much differently than they were in, let's say, the 100 years leading up to that. And I'm contending that food, we haven't seen that change yet. There's a great interest in this locavore movement and whatnot, but peak oil is in the headlines right now. Global climate change is in the headlines. But I think that knowledge of really where our food comes from, transparency into industrial practices in food, outrage over the loopholes that allow vast animal slums to poison major waterways that no city or factory could legally do. These are fringe movements at this point, really small groups of people that are paying attention to that, and that even with the huge scares we've had in industrial foods, such as the spinach outbreaks in beef, we have not substantially yet changed the way we eat. Americans want it fast and cheap. And we continue to wear the blinders that are necessary to ignore the health, the environmental, and even the human rights abuses that are necessary to make this happen. I guess I would say that nothing that the locavore movement has accomplished to date has even taken 1 mile yet off of that 1,500 miles that our food travels to our plate on average. So besides even all these really obvious things we could do by changing the way we look at food in health and environment, there are some really major benefits in food as an economic development model, and that's what I really want to focus on here. I'm going to try to just give kind of an example of one little shift we could make that might have a real major difference in that. And I think it's what the piece that I see that's kind of the focus of what we're doing here today. If we increased to only 10% of the food that we grew in this county, that we ate in this county, was grown in this county. Let me try to. I'm going to have a hard time saying this in a way I think that is very clear to all, and just stop me if you need to ask me anything that isn't clear about it. I'm guessing we eat about 1% of our food from this county right now. That 99% of it comes from somewhere else. And some of that makes sense because, we're a little bit more of an urban area than some of the counties around us. So that you can look at local food in a lot of ways. We're eating a little bit more probably from the counties around us, and that's great. You could look at local food as within 100 miles, and there'd be a percentage that you could come up with for each of these of what we're doing here. But for economic development, let's look at what we can develop in our county. And if it's only 1% right now, by moving to 10% would be a 9% increase. We eat about $1 billion worth of food every year in this county, over $1 billion. So 9% of that is $90 million of economic development we could have with that small shift. It's a big shift in that it's 10 times as much as we're doing right now. But it's really a small percentage of the food we eat. So if we look at Washtenaw County, and let's use Elliott Coleman's four-season farm as a model of these farms that we could generate in this area. Elliott Coleman is a real pioneer of four seasons agriculture. He lives in Maine. He's been doing organic farming for decades and has written a lot of books on organic farming and how to grow food year-round in a northern climate. So there's another great advantage. We can eat fresh food year-round. Elliott's farm grosses now about $120,000 a year on an acre and a half. So that's $80,000 per acre that he's producing on his farm. He has about 4 full-time jobs producing that food year-round. So in shifting to $90 million worth of local agriculture, we could be generating about 750 of Elliott's Four Seasons farms right here in this county, 750 of them. And that would be about 3,000 jobs. That would sit on only 1,125 of our 167,000 acres of farmland that we have presently. 3 jobs per acre. So, and even if all of these farms were really 10-acre farms that provided for woodlots and their own water sources that had, just this 1.5 acres of actual production, that would be less than 5% of the current farmland that we have in this county. There goes that banker. I'm almost there. So, in contrast, right now the county produces about $60 million in agriculture. It's going to be corn and soybeans mostly. That generates $360 per acre versus that 80,000 I was talking about. So the difference between growing real food that we could be consuming and growing commodity crops that are just going off into, who knows where, feedlots down in Kansas and to other countries and whatnot. We get, these are really easy numbers to generate. It's hard to get some of these numbers, but some of these are really easy to get off USDA figures. On those acres, that 167,000 acres, there's 3 1,000ths of a job per acre versus the 3 jobs per acre. So anyway, I think somebody over at the county might be interested in this as an economic development model. How do we get there? We vote with our wallets every day. So think about that when you're buying your food. And I look forward to talking with you all in any breakout session, anybody that wants to talk about more food issues. Thank you so much.